Well, I am pleased to see people here. I was really fully expecting to come back to an empty room this afternoon. But I'm really excited about doing this next, over the next hour and 15 minutes, I am going to walk you through how you never have to experience stress again for the rest of your life. I do this, there's several different courses I do for open enrollment, and I always say that in the morning of the first day, and I say, and if that's not true, I will refund the cost of this course for you. And after 20 years of doing that on 4 different continents and tens of thousands of people, nobody's ever asked for their money back. So we'll see if I can deliver that to you, that you walk out of here this afternoon with the skills to never experience stress again for the rest of your life. And soulfully for a second, it is from my heart to yours that I bring this material, because this is the centerpiece of all that I do. It is how that you do not have to be the victim of your past, and how you can start to have well-being as portable and not contingent upon the context of your day, your life, how you can return yourself back to well-being at any moment for the rest of your life. And I'm excited to get to do that. A couple of people have asked for my email. This is my email address and website address. You are welcome to copy that down. If you want any of the materials from today, you just email me and tell me you would like them, and I'll be happy to send you the PowerPoint or the handouts, whichever you prefer, or both. And if you want to do a deeper dive into this work, then there's plenty of resources there, for sure. And everybody got that? I'll wait 15 more seconds. And here, somebody, I'll put it back. I can take direction today. It only took me 48 years to be able to do that. You're welcome. So these are QR codes for 2 different YouTube sites. If you want to access free videos, I think I've got about 60 or so free videos on YouTube. Most of them are under the Gentry Ph.D., but the Institute has several also that are free. You are welcome to avail yourself to those resources for free as well. I'll give you a chance to either bookmark that or take a picture of it, whichever you prefer. Looks like everybody that's going to get it has got it. So I've taught thousands of people to do self-regulation, and it kind of comes in 2 parts. Go back? Yes, ma'am. The 2 parts are, the first 20 minutes or so is you being able to conceptualize what self-regulation is, that I want you to understand the process of it. Second 20 minutes or so is practicing some skills, some techniques to be able to interrupt your threat response. And then we will finish out this hour and 15 minutes with some dyadic exercises that are a lot of fun. And so without any further ado on that, here's how I start. Every time that I teach about self-regulation, I start by saying this: self-regulation is relaxation, but relaxation is not self-regulation. Let me say that again. Self-regulation is relaxation. Relaxation is not self-regulation. What's that mean? Well, pretty much all the technology that we have in our fields, in order to help people to get relaxed, it requires that they dissociate from the activities of daily living to be able to get their bodies relaxed. They have to, autogenics, meditation, diaphragmatic breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, all of those, the person has to kind of go over and find a place to be, practice those skills, which take 5 to 20 minutes before their body gets relaxed. Self-regulation, conversely, is the ability to do minimal relaxation, just enough to interrupt the threat response while being fully engaged in the activities of daily living. So it's not profound relaxation, and what we found is that people that have a relaxation practice, people that do meditation, people that do mindfulness, do a whole lot better job of self-regulation, but it is a wholly different and separate set of skills. So I always like to start with this, this chart, this curve, and it is the Yerkes-Dodson law. It was originally researched and published in 1908 with rat studies. It's been the subject of over 1,000 empirical studies, and it has evolved from the Yerkes-Dodson theory to the Yerkes-Dodson law, and it always plays out the same way. And to look at this, what I'm going to ask you to do is to see this y-axis here. It is performance. With humans, that's both cognitive performance and motor performance. Where on the horizontal, the x-axis, we are looking at how much energy is in the body. And what you see is here at the origin, no energy, no performance. You don't run very fast when you're asleep. You don't run very fast 5 seconds after waking up from sleeping. A minute after waking up from sleeping. But 10 minutes or 15 minutes after waking up from sleeping, you run about as fast as you could ever run. Because you have added energy to a body that was completely at rest. And the adding of the energy, it improves functioning until we get up here to peak performance. Look at what happens if you keep adding energy to that system. If you keep going with the energy on out here, you see there's that precipitous drop-off there in performance, back down on the other side of that. How many of you have ever studied for an exam, knew the material, had flashcards for the material on an exam, and then sat for the exam and could not recall the material that you knew? Any of y'all ever had that experience? That is you on the right-hand side of Yerkes-Dodson. Any of you performers or athletes? Have you ever found yourself like doing really well in rehearsal or really well in practice, and then game day comes or the performance comes and you find yourself choking? This is choking. This is where you have temporarily lost neocortical functioning, and you can't access the skills or the information to be able to perform optimally in that situation. Whereas if you're in practice or rehearsal, there's hardly any threat, perceived threat in that, so you're able to perform really well. So back in the 50s, this guy named Hans Selye, who immigrated to Canada from what was then Yugoslavia, he's known as the father of modern stress. And he put this middle line in here. And what he discovered is that anything to the right side of the line, over here, any of this, is distress. To the left side of the line is eustress. Now, what's the difference between eustress and distress? And a lot of people say, well, you perform better if you're in the eustress state. And that's just not true. You perform equally here as you do here. But performing at this level on the left-hand side, it doesn't cost you anything. It's not hurting you. It's not taxing you. Your systems are not over-functioning. But over here is unsustainable. That on the right-hand side of Yerkes-Dodson is why all of those bad things happen from ACEs, is living on the right-hand side of that curve. You got immune systems that are attacking healthy cells. your telomeres are shortening, your cell walls are decaying, is that life is not sustainable on the right-hand side of Yerkes-Dodson. So what self-regulation is really looking at this chart here. It's two things. It's one, becoming good at catching ourselves over on the right-hand side. And then two, doing something to get back over to the left-hand side. All within a 2 or 3 second window. So it's real brief. So there's those two parts that have to be done in order to self-regulate. We have to discover that we are indeed in a threat response and that the energy in our body is climbing up. And then we have to do something to be able to extinguish that threat response, to dissolve it, to come back to comfort, to come back to optimal functioning. What do you suppose are some of the ways that we could discover that we are over on the right-hand side? What would be some ways that let you knew that you were on the right-hand side? Ooh, what specifically? Pulse would work, but here's the problem with pulse. You either have to have an apparatus, like my Aura ring will do that, but I would still have to say, client, would you just be quiet for a second while I look and see what my pulse rate is? I mean, that's not very, very wieldy, or you'd have to count out at least 10 seconds to find out if your pulse, and is your pulse, how far out of alignment is it with what is resting pulse. So you have to know all of that. It's not very wieldy. What else in your body might tell you? Say again? Breathing. Oh, yeah, you could count your breaths. If you know how many breaths that you have in a minute, then if it's normally 12 and you're up to 14 or 15, then yes, likely you're in a threat response, because that does elevate. But now you're still a minute into that process of being able to tell whether or not your breaths are, the frequency of your respiration is elevated. There's a much simpler way. And the simplest way is, if you'll remember, for those of you who were at the previous discussion, what is the only reason that our muscles constrict? Is the perception of threat. That's right. It may not be real threat, but it is the perception of threat causes muscles to involuntarily constrict. So the most elegant way to discover you're in a threat response is to start to scan your body and discover, are there any muscles in my body that are involuntarily constricted right now? And then, once you discover that you have muscles involuntarily constricted, I wonder how you could get back over to the left-hand side. Well, with those same muscles, you intentionally release them. And when you intentionally release the muscles in your body that are involuntarily constricted, they're involuntarily constricted because you're in a threat response. When you release those muscles, you shift out of the sympathetic system back into the parasympathetic, the ventral vagal system. It interrupts the threat response when you intentionally release muscles that are involuntarily constricted. Pretty simple. It's hard to get much simpler than that. And that process, that skill, is called interoception. And what interoception is the ability to feel our bodies in real time. It is the ability to put your attention on your toe and to be able to describe what are the sensations in your toe, or your lower back, or your trapezius muscles, or your jaw muscles, that you can move the cursor of your awareness around in your body. I always like to think of taking the flashlight of my frontal lobe and shining it down into my body and just scanning my whole body and seeing what muscles are constricted. And then once we discover muscles that are constricted, we can relax them and return ourselves back to parasympathetic nervous system dominance, back to comfort in our body, back to optimal functioning. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a great afternoon. I mean, it really is that simple, but you kind of are feeling the hook in there, right? Because it's not that easy. And the higher your ACE score, the more trauma you have endured in your life. One of the ways that little boys and little girls live in environments where they are scared all the time is that they're in bodies that are in pain. Their bodies, little bodies are hurting because it's chronic constriction. And they don't have, they can't go buy Jack Daniels, or they can't get food on demand, and they don't have soothing skills to be able to get that distress soothed. So what do? They learn to do a process that's called somatic dissociation. They learn to numb their awareness of their body. They don't have a felt sense of their body. They live in their ideas. They live in their heads. And so a whole lot of what goes into helping people to not live as a victim of their painful past is helping them to be back in their bodies. How many of you have ever heard of Bessel van der Kolk? I was at a training he did right after he released his book in 2000. He released the book in the fall of 2015. 2016, I went up to Kripalu and did his training. And I was sitting there on the second day, and he just kind of out of the blue, he said, "You guys want to know what heals trauma? I'll tell you what heals trauma. Interoception heals trauma." And it was pretty sweet. I was there at the training with a woman who's a yoga instructor, and she's a better trauma therapist than I am. And she smacked me in the chest, and she said, "That's what you say." And it was a pretty sweet moment. I've been saying that for a decade, that our ability to start to monitor and know what's happening in our bodies as we navigate through the day, while we're driving our car, while they're interacting at work, while we are writing a report, our ability to come back and come to awareness of what's happening in our bodies, and then the practice of releasing that tension that we discover is restoration, scores up to hundreds of times a day, restoration of comfort, restoration of well-being, restoration of optimal functioning. And remember what I said earlier today, the more we are in a body whose muscles are relaxed, the less we're suffering from our painful past experiences. We're still having threat responses. We're still perceiving threat, but we're interrupting it. And here's maybe the biggest deal of all of this, and it gave me pause when I first got it conceptualized. One of my heroes is Joseph Ledoux. He's at New York University. He's probably the most cited person about the human threat response. He's a genius. And he did this article in 2016 of where he actually mapped the neural sequencing of the threat response. And what he discovered is that there are two pathways of the threat response in the human brain. And he calls one of them the high road and the other one the low road. And so what happens with the high road, and he calls the high road fear, he calls the low road anxiety. What happens with the high road is it moves through several brain structures. I'm not going to go through all those, but it ends at the frontal lobe. And since it's at the frontal lobe, you have consciousness of it. You know when you are afraid. But here's the rub. What he calls anxiety, the low road, is all the encounters that we have with sensory experiences during our day. That because of our painful past learning, we are experiencing them as threats. But we don't know it because it's not going to the frontal lobe. It's going straight from the amygdala to our bodies. What's that mean? That means for most of us in this room, we are having cascades of threat response, physiological activity in our bodies that's happening all day long that we are not aware of. And it just goes on and it generates symptoms, and we live in a state of quiet desperation that T.S. Eliot talked about. Well, what interoception does is it allows us to start to discover that we are having threat responses in our body that we heretofore did not know was happening. Check into your body right now. What muscle groups do you find that are constricted? Anybody, are you all able to find tight muscles right now? Yeah, almost all of us are able to do that. That means you're having a threat response right here, right now. And if you didn't look in there and check, that means that that was happening beneath your awareness, probably all day, every day. And it starts to make sense of why you would be symptomatic, doesn't it? If you're spending all day long in a sympathetic nervous system that's activated, you're over on the right-hand side of Yerkes-Dodson and you're generating symptoms. So that's what that looks like. If I go down here on the floor, can you get me? He's not going to respond. I'm just going to assume that he can. I'm going to pick on you a little bit. Can I do that? Wonderful. What's your name? Amy. I always do this every time that I do, every workshop, every client, when I'm explaining self-regulation, I always do this. I perceive every one of you in the room right now as a threat. Do you believe me? Every single face looking at me right now, I perceive as a threat. Not because of you, I perceive you looking at me right now as a threat. I tell my clients that and they go, what am I? I'm not doing anything. What do you mean? They get all strident. And I chuckle and I say, it's not really you. But I've been doing this work for 40 years. I've been stabbed. I've had guns pulled on me. I've had people cuss me out. I've had people threaten me. I've had all kinds of painful learning doing this work. And all of that is intruding into my perceptual system right now, causing me to perceive. Did I do something wrong? Oh, you're moving the mic. Okay. Thank you. Causing me to perceive your judgment of me as a threat, right? And here's what self-regulation looks like. Right now, I'm looking at Amy. My attention is totally on her countenance. But right now, she has no idea that I'm not paying a bit of attention to her. I have turned my attention into my body, and I'm scanning my body, and I just discovered 3 seconds ago I didn't know that. But now I've discovered my trapezius muscles are tight, my pectoral muscles are tight, my abdominal muscles are tight, my pelvic muscles are tight, and my not quadriceps, hamstrings are tight. And now what I'm doing is releasing all of those, returning myself back to comfort, returning my language skills, returning my grace back, and boom, I'm back. That's what self-regulation looks like. You don't see nothing's different, but what I'm doing is I'm breaking my attention away from the activities of daily living, putting my attention in my body just for a second, discovering that there's all of this activity and all this energy in there that I previously didn't know. I release it, let it go, and return my attention back to the next task. And then we go on and we talk and we do whatever. And then, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 minutes pass, and I'm looking at Amy again, and I turn my attention back into my body, and I discover all my muscles nice and relaxed, right? 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 No! They're all tightened back up again. Why? Can't we just set it and forget it? What's not changed? My learning history hasn't changed. I still have all that painful past learning that is intruding into my perceptual system right here. And you guys are still here. My sympathetic nervous system wants me to kill you or run away from you. But Eric, the owner of that nervous, Krishnamurti said, we're both the beast and its rider. That's pretty good, isn't it? Well, my beast acts like the beast in the animal kingdom act, is it gets scared and it wants to lash out with aggression or run away and avoid. That energy, if it continues to rise, will compel me into self-defense against my will. I will become aggressive or I will become avoidant. I'll shut down, I'll start dissociating with Amy. But what I've discovered is that if I continue to soothe that beast, and I got to feed him every once in a while, and I got to take him to the bathroom, and but as long as I am continuing to soothe that beast, and that beast just stays asleep, and Eric the rider is in charge all day long. Eric gets to be intentional in word and deed in the way that he is engaging in his life, instead of breaching my integrity because I'm engaging involuntarily in self-defense. Any of that starting to make any sense at all? It's pretty darn simple. It's just the hardest thing I ever do. And I've been doing it for 25 years. And here's what's true for me. I don't think it's universally true. I've had people tell me that it's not true for everybody, not for them. But I have never, ever, I do this 100 plus times a day, and I've never discovered the muscles in my body relaxed. There is always constriction. I am always perceiving threat. And for 40 years of my life, I didn't know it. But now it's pretty nice to be able to know when that's happening and to be able to interrupt it. And as soon as I interrupt it and release those muscles, any of y'all able to do that right now? Any of you can catch the muscles tight in your body and release them? How does that feel? Yeah, it's better. That better is always available. And you know where we didn't get to this morning is that folks who are in threat response a lot believe the environment is the cause of their distress, and they are trying to change the environment, trying to get the environment to bend to their will, and it won't work. It is constantly in a state of being hurt by the environment, which when we start to put our attention and energy where we have control, i.e., what's happening in my own body, I get to be able to be comfortable sitting here in front of you, being afraid of you for the next 45 minutes without it hurting me, and still be able to say what I mean and mean what I say without saying it mean. I think that's kind of lovely, but that's my bias. So you have now a conceptual understanding of what self-regulation is. And to put it into more concrete language, it is neuroception, the ability to detect safety, which we did this morning, and teroception, being able to look at what's happening in our bodies and discovering constricted muscles, and then the acute relaxation. That's self-regulation. When we add exposure to it, when we intentionally confront things that scare us but are not dangerous, in a body that is relaxed, we are healing our past right here in our present, going forward, becoming ever more less a victim of our past while we are doing the desensitization. And what happens then is that trauma healing becomes lifestyle. And the more that we are resolving the effects of the past, the more that we are optimizing our present, just by living, just by practicing, discovering our body's tight, and releasing it, releasing it, releasing it, releasing it. It's a skill like any other skill. It takes practice. So if you would have seen me do this 18 years ago, 20 years ago, I would have told you there is only one right way to do self-regulation, my way. And 20 years later, with a little bit of maturation, it turns out I was right. There's only one right way to do self-regulation, but sadly, it's not my way. It's your way. And here's what's cool about self-regulation. You discovering any group of muscles in your body, trapezius muscles, jaw muscles, butt muscles, calf muscles, any group of muscles that are habitually constricted, and you practicing releasing those muscles, anytime you are discovering a muscle that is tight and you're intentionally releasing it, you are practicing self-regulation. It is that simple. And what's cool about that is the more that you checking in on your body, do you see that that's going to start to dissolve the numbing, the somatic dissociation. You're going to get better and better and better, having more and more airtime, becoming aware of what's happening in your body, and know your body better. So you start with your trapezius muscles of releasing those. You know, the 67th time you do that, you start becoming aware of your pectoral muscles and your upper back muscles. And then the 195th time, you start becoming aware of what's happening in your abdomen. You begin to make friends with your body. So there's no right way to do it. That said, I do have a couple of, what I do with my clients is I lay out a smorgasbord of techniques that we found pretty helpful for other people to use, and we'll try these, and you can try them on and see which ones work better for you, and then hopefully you can go out of here today practicing one or two of those and see which one fits best for you. But also knowing that there, again, is no right way. You just noticing what's happening in your body. So there's 4 of them that I'm going to do with you this afternoon. I'll walk you through those, and then we're going to do some exercises and practice it. So the first one is something that I call a wet noodle. It's a dumb name for it, but I developed it 25 years ago. You know, you think about wet noodle as being like Gary Larson's boneless chicken. That's not what it is. It is, what I'm going to ask you to do is sitting there in the chair that you're in, I'm going to ask you to take 10 seconds and scan your body from the top of your head, moving to I'll count from 10 down to 1. I'm going to ask you to move your awareness gently and slowly down your body into your jaws, into your cheek, into your neck, into your shoulders, chest, abdomen, pelvis, thighs, all the way down your body. And as your awareness moves down your body, any group of muscles that you discover that are constricted, you're just going to soften those muscles. Just softening all the way down till we get to your feet. So for those of you that want to participate in this, go ahead and join me. And starting here with the awareness at the top of your head and moving that awareness down your body into your facial muscles and your jaw muscles. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So, for those in the room right now, on a SUD scale, some of you know that scale, it stands for subjective units of distress. It's an 11-point Likert scale. 0 is no distress. 10 is maximum distress. How many of you in the room right now have a SUDS level between 0 and 2? Could I please see your hands? Those of you that have a distress level between 0 and 20% right now. So for those of you that are raising your hands, you now know how to never experience stress again for the rest of your life. You've already demonstrated that you got the skill to be able to bring yourself to that place. What nobody's ever done with or for you until me has been to challenge you to start taking that skill that you just demonstrated to yourself and to others that you have and pairing it with the high-demand context of your life, of while you're stuck in traffic, of while you're in conflict with your spouse, of while you are getting emails with all caps, while you are in situations that activate your threat response. I'm going to ask you to start practicing doing that. And if it does not improve your functioning and does not improve your quality of life, then there's no reason to ever do it again. But if every time you intentionally, when you get activated, if every single time you are practicing releasing that tension in your body, then I would invite you to continue to practice that capacity. If that one's useful, take it with you. The next one is, how many of you use breathing as a tool for regulation? The problem with breathing, just by itself, is there's a lot of regulated breathing patterns out there. Square breathing, 4-4-4-4, 5-7-8. There's a lot of different structured breathing exercises out there. The problem with that is that you can do that all cognitively. You can stay in your brain and do that. What we're trying to do, though, is to develop some body awareness so that you can start discovering all of those threat responses that you didn't know that you were having. You're probably only doing the breathing stuff when it's bursting through into consciousness because there's so much distress in your body, you are becoming aware of it. I'm wanting you to start practice catching it before it gets up there to that point and being able to intervene and bring it back down. So here's a really cool tool for teaching people what breathing should feel like and how to do it. I'm going to ask you to lace your fingers together in front of your face like this. Put your hands behind your head, lean back in your chair, and pull your elbows back. And breathe. And what you will notice about your breath when you're doing that is you are now breathing horizontally. Trauma survivors, you tell a trauma survivor to take a deep breath, what they do is it's vertical. They do that. So that breath and being able to release your body on the exhale, so your belly goes out on the inhale, and then on the exhale, just releasing all the muscles, not regulating the exhale, just completely letting go on the exhale. And you don't need to put your hands over your head to do this, but that just shows you what it feels like in your body. It's the deep breath horizontally and then releasing. And 2 or 3 of those, and it will bring the energy in your body back down. If that one's useful, you are welcome to steal that one. Let me show you the third, the penultimate skill. And this, I've had the privilege of working with the men and women of United States Special Forces multiple times. And they teach people who are in Special Forces a skill to use before targeting a weapon. Any of you who have ever fired a firearm at a target, you know the more relaxed your body, the more accurate you are with that. Well, for Special Forces starting out in 1918 with Force Recon, they wanted to figure out a way to help those people to relax really quickly. And what they found was, what do you suppose, when you're in a threat response, what do you suppose happens to your vision? What's it do? It involuntarily becomes very tunnel, very hyper-focused on whatever the threat is. Whatever's happening in the environment that's activating your threat response is that you hyper-focus on that. Well, what we found with a good deal of research is that when you intentionally widen back out your peripheral vision, you are forcing your nervous system out of sympathetic into parasympathetic. It's one of the few methods of doing this that don't require interoception. And it's been interesting. I've worked with a lot of alpha men and women with self-regulation, and they all gravitate to this skill. So let me show it to you. I'm going to ask you to put your fingers out here in front of your face at a right angle. One finger, the pad of one finger over top of the thumbnail of the other. So it makes a right angle like that. Good. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to keep your eyes fixated straight ahead. You're not going to move your eyes at all during this exercise. But what I'm going to ask you to do is to gradually widen out your fingers. And keeping your eyes looking straight ahead, you're going to keep your fingers in your vision. So as you get that wider and wider, keep those fingers in your vision. And notice what's happening in your body as you get your peripheral awareness all the way out to the side as far as it can get. And just hold that for a second and notice what your body does when you are attending to your periphery. What's it doing? Anybody noticing? She's yawning over there, which is a... I'm sorry. Well, that's what moving to the parasympathetic system does, is it will cause you to yawn. So if that's a useful tool, then I invite you to steal that one. Now, the last one I want to do, and then we'll do some exercises to practice this, where it comes alive, is I want to make sure everybody has informed consent to practice this one. It's pelvic floor relaxation. And, I'm always sensitive to men and women that have histories of sexual violence. And for clients that I know that have histories of sexual violence, I still want to offer it to them. And I say to my clients that have a history of sexual violence, are you interested in regaining ownership and control of that area of your body? And if they say yes, I say, well, let me show you how. If they say, no, I don't want to deal with that at all, then I don't foist this upon them. So I want to make sure that if you do have that history, if any of you in the room do have that history, for everybody, you are welcome to just watch this, and then if you want to try it later on your own, or if you don't want to deal with it at all, then I certainly understand. But this is the most potent, and what I've found is the most powerful way to interrupt the threat response and return your body back to comfort. So if you're going to do this, if you're thinking about making this a practice, this is probably the best way to do it. Not the only, but it's probably the best. So for those of you that want to check this out, what I'm going to ask you to do is to hold your hands out, palms up, and to put your hands under your butt for just a second and feel the two bones that you're sitting on. And you may need to wobble around a little bit to touch those bones solidly. That's fine. Just touch those are called the ischial tuberosities. Touch those two sit bones, and then take your hands out. Now touch next. These are called the iliac crest. It's your pelvic kind of hip bones that stick out there on the front and the side. And then once you've touched those solidly, then release. Now what you've just done is you've made a touch memory in your body for 4 points, haven't you? You should be able to feel find those 4 geographical points in your body interoceptively, not cognitively, but you can feel the lingering sensation of where you just touched those. Everybody have that? Everybody can feel that? If not, touch those points again so you're absolutely certain what those feel like. So what I'm going to ask you to do next there's the 4 points. What I'm going to ask you to do next is to imagine that you are connecting all 4 of those dots with a straight line. So you got a straight line from this bone to this bone, going across the front here. You got a straight diagonal line going down the side from that bone to that bone. You got a straight flat line across the bottom, and then you have a straight diagonal line coming back the other side. So that when I don't have a piece of paper. When that sits in your body, it's about a 45-degree angle. High up here in the front, low in the back, and it's a quadrangle-y thing. It's a squarish thing. And when you think about the area that square covers, all the muscles of the pelvis are going through the middle of that square. So what I'm going to ask you to do for the next 20 seconds is I'm going to ask you to allow that square to just expand. You don't need to push it out. You're just going to have no clenching of any of those muscles in the middle of that square and just completely soften that whole area of your body for 15 more seconds, just completely releasing and softening those muscles in the middle of that square, focusing on the very center of that square, your core muscles, and releasing and opening those muscles. Congratulations. You have parasympathetic dominance right now. It is physiologically impossible for you to experience stress while those muscles are relaxed. And there's a whole physiological process behind that I've written about in several of my books, but you cannot have a relaxed pelvis and a stress response at the same time. When you bring your pelvis into relaxation, it automatically interrupts the threat response. I'm going to ask you all to do it one more time to soften those muscles. And just bark out to me, what do you notice happening in your body when you release your pelvic muscles? What's your body doing when you release those muscles? What's happening in it? Any comments?
Sleepy.
Say again? Sleepy. Say again? Really centered. What's happening when you release the muscles of your pelvis? What's happening to the muscles in your trapezius muscles? What's happening to your facial muscles? What's happening to your thigh muscles? The pelvic muscles are the only group of muscles in the human body that you get a total systemic relaxation when you release them. So again, it's not the only way, but it is the most potent way to interrupt that threat response. So every time that you release the muscles in your pelvis, you are restoring yourself back to well-being and comfort. I don't know, color me an optimist, but I think that's pretty cool, that well-being is portable, that you can have that independent of whatever's going on out there, as you put your attention and energy on what you have the power to control and stop trying to control that which is beyond your control. So to finish up today, I have some short exercises that bring this to life. And they're fun and they're cool. They're dyadic. They're short. They're 1 minute apiece. And they are, you get to, during this exercise, you get to discover the giant chasm between simple and easy. This is a really simple process. You discover muscles tight and you release them. That's simple. It's a whole different kettle of fish to try to do that while you're engaged in the activities of daily living. And I want you to have a little bit of practice before you go. Nobody's compelled to participate in this activity, but for those of you that want to do it, and I can feel pretty comfortable saying that you will regret not doing them, but it's your call. I'm going to ask you to find a partner. As I said, it's dyadic. Find a partner that you could sit across from and look at. And for those of you that will have, 20 seconds of awkwardness that you can relax your way through, and you guys are probably pretty good at that, to find a partner and sit across from. If you do not have a partner and you want to do this activity, please raise your hand so that somebody that wants to do it can find you as a partner. Is there anybody in the room that would like to do this activity that does not have a partner? Going once? Going twice? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. So this first exercise is really simple. Let me put that up on the screen so that you can see it while I'm talking about them. So the first exercise is really simple, very straightforward. That you're just going to look your partner in the eye. Don't go to your happy place. Stay present. And keep the muscles in your body relaxed for 60 seconds. That's it. Nonverbal. 60 seconds, nonverbal. Look at your partner and keep the muscles in your body relaxed. 60 seconds, ready, go. You're halfway there. And stop. I'm going to ask you to not devolve into conversation with each other. I promise you I'll say some time at the end for you to do some debriefing, but so that we can move on through the exercises, I'm going to ask you to return your attention back to me. The second exercise is really similar to the first one we just did. Except what we're going to do with this one that's different is we're going to split the time into two 30-second halves. And for one of those 30-second halves, you're going to be the sender, and the other half, you're going to be the receiver. When you're in the sender's role, what I want you to do is I want you to look at your partner with the intention of being helpful. I want you to exude whatever that ineffable thing is you exude when you help somebody. Whatever it is that comes out of you when you're helping somebody, I'm going to ask you to just let that flow and direct it and aim that at your partner. When you're in the receiver's role, I'm going to ask you to allow yourself to be cared for, cared about while that's happening. Now, in both of those two roles, I'm going to ask you to keep the muscles in your body relaxed. But I'm also going to ask, which role are you finding more perceived threat? And how would you know that? The muscles in your body are tightening up. Start to be curious about, is it the sender or is it the receiver that I am perceiving more threat? And see if you can start to question why that might be so. Take a second to discuss with your partner who's going to go first in which role. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, begin. Switch. And stop. I want to take just a couple of minutes to do just a little bit of processing with you. How many of you at any time during those 2 minutes of exercises found your body tightening up one or more times? Most of you in the room. Were any of you in any empirical danger? Was there anything dangerous that happened during that? No. So why were you perceiving threat? What's that? Uncomfortable. That's a great guess. It's the wrong answer, but it's a great guess. Why were you perceiving threat? You thought what?
I thought I'd be a crummy helper.
You thought you'd be a crummy helper. That's another great guess. That's another great guess. What's the only reason that a human being perceives threat where there is no danger? It's what? What's causing that to happen? It's painful past learning, intruding into the perceptual system of the present, causing you to perceive threat where there is no danger. So something about eye contact, something about the performance demands, something about that was tagging some painful experience of your past, causing the amygdala to fire here in the present where there was nothing at all that was really dangerous. For those of you who are caregivers, who are helpers, what do you think's happening in your body when the person sitting across from you looks at you and says, "I don't think you're helping me very much"? What's happening in your body when the person you're working with says, "I want to kill myself"? You don't know, do you? Because you've been completely absorbed in what's happening with your client and you've not been aware of what's happening in your body. And let me just make this really clear. For any of you who ever work with trauma survivors, whether that's in a clinical sense or just any kind of helping sense that you supervise them, the most important intervention that you can ever do with somebody who is a trauma survivor is that you engage them and you continue to be in a parasympathetically dominant, relaxed body while you are in the context of the people you are working with. And that is their first opportunity to have the felt sense of safety with another human being. And I can't think of anything that is more valuable to deliver to somebody than have them have the opportunity to feel safe with another person. And you then become a co-regulator. You are intervening with their nervous system because they are not reading you jacked up, and their nervous system calms down. So it is just a crucial. Everybody that I work with, that is the base skill that we start with. Okay, now we're going to go verbal. And when we start getting verbal, you guys will forget all about having bodies. You get all caught up in what's happening with your partner. But I'm going to ask for just this couple of minutes that you do pay attention simultaneously. You're going to have to work the dialectic now. You're going to have to pay attention to what your partner's saying, but also come back to your own body and check it out and intervene. And so we're enhancing the skill. So what this looks like is that we're going to now extend to 2 minutes, and each of you will have an opportunity in 1 minute to tell a narrative of an experience in your past that was embarrassing. If you can't think of an embarrassing story, it can be any narrative from any context in your life. It can be what you had for breakfast this morning. Doesn't really matter. The content of this doesn't matter. So you could just tell any story. But what is your job when you are in the receiver's role? You guys are the best trained, those of you that have had CPE training, you guys are the best trained people on the planet to do this, by the way. Is to do, don't just do something, sit there. Right? Yes. I'm going to ask that you attune and listen and connect and be loving kind, but STHU. That means be quiet. You don't need to add any verbalizations here. I'm going to ask you to just stay in a comfortable body while you are listening to the narrative of your partner. Take a few seconds to discuss with your partner who's going to go first in the telling role, who's going to go first in the receiving role. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, begin. Switch, switch. And stop. Last activity. Last one. This is my favorite one. So you've been working with the same partner now for the past 15 minutes or 10 or 15 minutes. You have learned enough about your partner through both the first two exercises of observing them and then this last one of listening to them tell you a little bit of a narrative. You have learned enough about your partner that for 60 seconds you can look them in the eye and tell them the things about them that you perceive as their good qualities, their strengths, the things that you like or the things that you admire about them. Now, while you're telling your partner these things, you don't necessarily need to be right. But I would ask that you be honest. honest in whatever kind of intuitive sense that you've gleaned from this person sitting across from you. You're just going to share with them for 60 seconds what you perceive to be their good qualities. While you're in the receiver's role, what's your job? Is to take it. And I want to promise you that no matter how much your body wants to turn into a pretzel while people are saying nice things about you, there is zero danger in that. So you do not need to interrupt them. You don't need to squirm. You just stay in a relaxed body and absorb hearing somebody tell you what they perceive to be your strengths. Take a second to discuss with your partner who's going to go first in which role. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Switch, switch. Thank you, God. And stop. Take the next 3 minutes to debrief this whole process with your partner, then we'll come back together and finish up for the day. Okay, I want to go ahead and finish up and just ask all of you in the room, if I could have your attention, you can absolutely continue the conversation afterwards. I want to ask, how many of you in the room are leaving knowing how to never experience stress again for the rest of your life? Did I deliver on my promise? Yes, I did. I didn't say I was going to do it for you. I said you were going to learn how. For any of you who are still a little bit confused about that, I would direct your attention to the question up on the screen. Not your spouse, not your boss, not the traffic. You are the one who is squeezing the muscles in your body. Are you enjoying that squeezing? If you are, squeeze away. But if you are no longer enjoying it, then I would like to invite you to stop doing the squeezing. Now that's so simple it's almost snark, but it's not meant to be. Some of you have spent decades learning to get good at squeezing the muscles in your body. Anybody with a little bit of focus and a little bit of attuned work on this can learn to unsqueeze those muscles in a systemic and ongoing fashion. My hope is that you would choose to do that. I want to remind all of you that if there is ever any way that I can be of service to you in the performance of your mission, then you have a resource in me. It's been an honor and privilege to be with you guys today. That's all I got. Thanks.